Now on to our feature presentation, our speaker, and I'm almost on time, Council. 75 years of service with Mr. Ken Veronda. Do we have drum roll or anything, or there's some fancy music, you know? Okay, that'll be good.
Okay, Alhambra, where's the rest of Alhambra visitors? I hope you understand you are responsible for this mess. Our first president.
I'm glad you weren't looking at me when you said that.
The mess part, yeah. Our first president, who was also our second and our third president, but I'll get to that, said that Alhambra inculcated us with the germ of Rotary. Now that sounded like a bad sickness, but it did catch on at any rate, and our president now forgets the fact that new chartered clubs are supposed to receive gifts from all the neighborhood clubs. So yes, Alhambra gave us this. Alhambra gave us the first banner, which I think was long since eaten by the hungry moths or something. And what do? Give him back a little tiny version of it? That's pretty cheap, man. Yeah. You know, well, these came from you originally. But wait a minute, don't you snicker though. Remember that Alhambra got its name from two San Marino sisters who had been reading Washington Irving and thought it was romantic to talk of Alhambra and Granada and the Moors. If they'd been reading Tolstoy, of course, our neighbors would be Moscow and their football team would be the Cossacks. Or if they were reading A.A. Milne, this would be Pooh Corners down here with the Ruse football team. So you should be appreciative we named you reasonably well as Alhambra, dramatic, but they did get things started. Len, you sent me a history of the club written about 20 years ago. Please don't believe any of that.
You wrote it.
I wrote it.
I have it right here.
It wasn't worth reading. It isn't worth paying attention to because it said, of course, we met at Pierre's. No, as you just heard by the speech that he stole from me, it was Larry Shepard, a builder around town, who got this going in February 3rd. And then there was a meeting February 10 at the Huntington.
I'm looking.
But it doesn't even get chartered until May, so what the heck are we doing celebrating in April? Rotary San Marino has always been a little bit disorganized in trying to find out when our holidays are. We do pick April to have some date for a holiday, and that was a pretty good time, April of 1939, no war yet. It was a fairly peaceful period here in San Marino with all 4,000 residents, and the Huntington Hotel booming as the great place to meet and eat, except the Huntington started charging 55 cents a meal, which was more than the tightwads at San Marino Rotary were willing to pay. So they moved out of the Huntington fairly early, tried Pierre's. Anyone remember Pierre's, the house of Crepe Suzette? During Prohibition, Pierre would legally pour the cognac and set it on fire as he processed in with Crepe Suzette on fire. And I'm told that if you needed a little additional liquid to add on top, that he would pour you an inch or two of his French cognac separately. But that was before our city got so stuffy and wouldn't allow alcohol for a while at Pierre's. We did go there for a little while. Actually, we came back to Pierre's, which I will remind you about. Then we moved to private homes for a while, which was sort of the Rotary deal. I'm told that Flossie Taylor, anyone remember Flossie Taylor? Flossie did City Club, Flossie did Chamber, Flossie did just about every catering job in town. I remember her, as a little kid I was. but she made watermelon pickles and dill pickles that were marvelous. And in the late 30s, early 40s, she fed this club roast beef, pork chops, ham for 40 cents a meal. The club still stayed very small, as 40 cents a meal was considered pretty pricey. I looked in our San Marino Tribune for April 1939, and you could buy a couple of houses over in the new subdivision below San Marino High School today. You could buy a house for $37.30, which isn't bad when the average earnings I found in this Pasadena marketing district in 1939 were $1,735. You could buy a new house in San Marino for twice your annual earnings, which is a little hard today, unless, of course, you come from new money from overseas. When a new Ford Crown Vicky, 1939, $635 to protest about Flossie's lunches at 40 cents was stretching it a bit. The same week this club really got organized, a new book came out by John Steinbeck, The Grapes of Wrath. I don't think it sold very well in San Marino because it was a little critical of the way the Okies were treated when they came out here, and our membership, of course, would be not inclined at that time to be reading left-wing literature like Steinbeck. Instead, some people the same week, I'm sure, went out to San Bernardino, April of 1939, for the previews of a new movie, The Wizard of Oz. But did you know Frank Baum of The Wizard of Oz lived in South Pasadena, just about a block from Garfield, and after The Wizard of Oz had written half a dozen books continuing the Oz series, some of which bring in a magical Munchkin town that looks in his drawings appears to be very much San Marino as Oz. They never sold very well, so I don't know if you can see them. But yes, as Peter said, we were chartered with 24 members, all men. John Barton, who was the manager of the brand new bank in town, first time we had a bank. Everybody, of course, went over to the city, South Pasadena, where there were two banks. South Pass, where you paid your electric bill and your water bill and your gas bill in cash up and down Mission Street. South Pass was the place to go to buy stuff. Alhambra, even to me growing up, is down near Long Beach or someplace down there, because of course Pacific Electric, our streetcars, didn't bother going down to you. They went to South Pass or up into the big city, Pasadena itself, in 1939. The charter members here is a pretty good group. We had the banker. He stayed as president for the second term and then was reelected to his third term. That was the era of Franklin Roosevelt, and I guess it was sort of habit to keep the same president in office. There was a civil engineer and a dentist. There were 2 grocery store owners. We had 6 grocery stores in San Marino. Today's there were 2 druggists. We do finally have 1 drugstore back, but there were 6 drugstores in 1939, 2 here. A travel agent, we still have a good travel agent, but she doesn't go back to 1939. The original one, Gordon's Travel, was around for years and years and years. San Marino Rotarian, a jeweler, a builder, Larry Shepard. Then we had an osteopath and a medical doctor. I came in long after they were gone, but I'm told the 2 of them, one would sit over there one over here, and sort of throw daggers at each other to have a medical person and an osteopathic physician in the same club. You know, of course, Rotary expects you'll have one person from every profession or business in town, one for each kind of business, I should say, which has presented problems in a small town like us with relatively few professions and businesses. Same thing back then. At one point in 1939, they had 3 grocers, which they solved quite simply by calling one of their classifications a fruit grocer, one a meat grocer, and the third one a vegetable purveyor, not grocer. We did that for quite a while, even after I became a member. At one point we had 8 bankers. Do you remember that, John? Because we had 11 Johns at that point. Remember that? We solved the banker problem. There was home loan classification, business loan classification, auto loan classification, commercial banker in town, retail banker. They came up with a classification for each of the 8 who did stay very active in this club until their various banks discovered that Rotary did not permit women to join. You remember that, of course. And all the banks, one after another, refused to pay the fees, the membership for bankers who were working or attending an organization that was not open to women. And somehow, for all 8, Rotary wasn't quite good enough for them to pay it personally because they were used for their bank business. And we lost all the bankers just like that, which sort of hurt that particular year. Frank and Edith Collins, who had good teachers at Southwestern. Frank and Edith Collins had started a newspaper, the Tribune, incidentally, 6 years after they'd started Southwestern's newspaper, so we're much older than this upstart Tribune. Frank and Edith, Frank was a member. Edith came quite regularly as almost an honorary member to San Marino Rotary. We had also in the club Elmer Nair, the superintendent of schools, which of course was kindergarten through 8th grade when the kids took the big red cars over to South Pasadena. So Nair Auditorium at the high school now, was superintendent of the elementary district and a wonderful, wonderful gentleman. Ham Stevens was a charter member, Turner and Stevens Mortuary. Turner and Stevens was where we all went too many times each year, especially during and after World War II, when we had a number of losses here in town. Ham Stevens had, I think it was 65 years of perfect attendance in Rotary, which was a little bit of a crib toward the end because we sort of decided as a board that everybody had seen Ham there that particular meeting. You saw it. Yeah, he was here. Give him credit so that he could maintain, and as he lay his last few months, he wanted to make sure he got credit for perfect attendance at Rotary year after year, which I thought was very inspirational. There were still 4 charter members left when I joined. Well, I didn't really join. I was invited to go down to the next meeting place after Pierre's of Woody and Eddie's. I remember Pierre's was sort of a faux French chateau right across from City Hall with faux furniture, but very unfaux bar, a very big bar in San Marino after Pierre could serve instead of using it only for flavoring of his of his crêpe Suzette, went with my dad 3 or 4 times after he joined this club briefly. He pulled out in 6 or 8 weeks. The Pierre chair in their dining room were faux French. Those old things that have a little dip in the middle of them in the cushion deliberately to try to be elegant or something. As Rotarians would stand up to speak, the guy sitting next to them would pour some ice water into the chair so that when you sat back down, you wet your pants. That was not my father's cup of tea, so he pulled out, went to Kiwanis, which was the big club in San Marino, double the membership of San Marino Rotary in the 40s and 50s. Very, very active, hands-on with children's projects, youth projects, and so forth. San Marino Rotary was hands-on checks, writing checks and doing things. So during World War II, we read that they did some scrap metal drives, they did some household grease collection. I remember my mommy saving bacon drippings and things like that. Can anyone explain how all the kitchen grease that was collected throughout the United States, how that protected us from the Nazis and the fascists? I never could figure it out, but San Marino Rotary got a certificate for collecting kitchen grease. McCormick Hospital, that's the old Vista del Arroyo Hotel that had been temporarily borrowed as a military hospital for what we today would call post-traumatic stress disorders. McCormick, now the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, was full of what we called then improperly shell-shocked people. And this club did make a regular weekly call of members to go up and entertain, play cards, talk. And also over at Lacey Park, which was fenced off completely for the military to bring in truckloads of hospital people from the McCormick Hospital to exercise in Lacey Park, thereby tearing it apart completely, so that at the end of the war, our city had to finally sue the federal government to try to get that repaired. But yes, this was somewhat hands-on as a club through the 40s and into the 50s, down at Woody and Eddie's. By this time, San Marino was officially dry, thanks to a couple of church groups that brought that in. Woody and Eddie's was about, a third of a block over the line, Steve, in San Gabriel County territory, down where House Market is today. Woody and Eddie's was a 2-story fake colonial, downstairs a huge bar, and staircase going up to a small meeting room about a third this size. At the top of the stairs there was no door into the meeting room, so you could hear the bar and vice versa. First time I was invited to that Rotary Club meeting, I think of the 35, about 15 or 20 made it up the stairs. There were quite a few of our members who would go to Rotary about 10:30 in the morning, get back to work about 3:30 or 4 in the afternoon. I was invited by the city manager. Notice in the incorporation group, by the way, there were no people like politicians, no school board members, no city council, no subversive types like city managers, police chiefs, planning commission. We didn't even have a planning commission at that time. But by the 50s and 60s, we started getting the politicians to join, usually pushing causes like, murals on the wall and stuff like that. Our politicians we put up with now, they didn't have to back then. But the city manager at the time invited me in my 20s to come see what was happening at Rotary. And I walked into a room where I was 1/3 the age of the youngest other member. Nobody greeted me, nobody paid any attention. At the end of the meeting, they brought in Frosty Foster, which some of you might remember, going to be the great new member of our club. He's going on to big things in this club. The meeting is adjourned. Oh, by the way, we have another new member, Ken Veronda. Nobody had even asked me to join or gave me a pin, which I don't even have today, and I'm not going to pay for one either. That was Rotary. Sleeping down at the bar or upstairs until, and Lois, I hope you will agree with me, I credit Elder Morgan, Larry Shepard's partner, for coming in one afternoon down at Woody and Eddie's and saying, guys, I got a truck outside with shovels, picks, grass, plants. That street corner there near San Marino High School was just opening is ugly. We are getting out of here. No food today. Let's go down and help build a park with work. We lost 2 members within 2 weeks. But people did go down and dig the gardens and plant the trees, and it felt pretty good to do something. And I credit that a lot for the beginnings of the club. The germ that you guys had infected us with 20 years before finally caught hold. I'd like to think of it as inspiration rather than some germ. And this club turned around totally. And for that, I think each of us need to be very proud, especially when women started coming in. There's new growth. Lacey Park, egg rolling. There were 3 streetcar shelters. We did all 3 of them for Christmas decorations. And of course, today Jack Hamilton is continuing the tradition with the one remaining bus shelter down here. Toy drives, boxes for overseas shipment, for food. The club had gotten together once before with the community, rather remarkably, when the longtime secretary of this club, he'd been secretary since the early 40s. He lived above San Marino football field in what was then the water field for percolation. He'd gone up to Sacramento to report to the legislature that there were a number of open wells in this area that needed capping, not realizing that same afternoon his 6-year-old daughter, Kathy, fell down one of those wells and was trapped. Her cries, her screams could be heard by San Marino Fire, by crowds that came to try to help. Rotary setting up, I am told, a food table, soup operation, all Friday night under floodlights, all day Saturday night, Sunday morning. The LA area was focused on the story of Kathy Fiscus here in San Marino, partly because 2 young guys just out of World War II, Stan Chambers and Bill Welch, had been fooling around with an old truck with TV equipment on it to beam the signal, which had never been done before, from a remote unit up to Mount Wilson, where the black and white pictures, including, if you look at the kinescopes, which are still around, the Rotarian table of food. All of LA Basin, later by news getting out, most of America watching the story of Kathy Fiscus. But we kept on going with more and more hands-on things. Support for the foundation became big. Our first woman president, our first woman member, Barbara Bice, still a wonderful member in person when she's not traveling, it shows that. Debbie Lowry, our first president, a little unusual, starting as a single woman first president of our club, becoming our first president married while in office, our first pregnant president, our first sitting president to deliver Aaron, or any boy, today a wonderful father himself. And see, you can't even set those records around here, Peter. We began to really move with women after the Duarte X case, which several people here quietly sent checks to support the lawsuits by Duarte Rotary on discrimination against women. And finally, of course, RI had to break down. We got kicked really into the 80s and 90s, helping at Skid Row with the LAMP program, if you remember, our school programs in art, speech, music, essay writing, setting up a Interact and another Interact and another Interact. We tried a Rotaract, it didn't work too well at Cal State LA, helped for La Casa. Then, thanks to Merrill Francis, a huge fundraiser that sent money down to buy first one farm, subdivide it, then a second farm, subdivide it, and a third farm for refugees of the Guatemalan Civil War who had moved into Mexico, came back to find their farms destroyed. San Marino Rotary set up and still supports a continuing fund to help the poorest of Guatemalan people in the Cuchumatanes Mountains. During that same war, we collected materials, light switches, toothbrushes for a kindergarten, and of course Polio Plus. Please don't forget the plus part. We haven't quite succeeded in getting rid of polio. New outbreaks last week in Syria with Iraqi accepting some Syrians with polio again. It ain't over yet. However, the plus part was to have a physician for the first time in the kids' lives take a look at an infant while giving them the polio inoculations and protections. This was a tremendous advantage to so many third world people. I can't find statistics, but I'm sure we saved several million lives with International Rotary, not just protecting from polio, but helping with the plus part. It's been a good bunch of years. We had President Bob come up with 5 goals. Did he skip out already? I was going to compliment. Oh, you're hiding over there. You know, Polk, as president, is the only president to have 4 national goals and meet them. Bob's the only president to have 5 San Marino goals and meet all of them. Next year, I think Russ has 37 planned out. It'll be a good year. But meanwhile, thank you, sir. You guys did inoculate us pretty well, though we'd like to think it inspirational. Forget him who didn't know that the bell came from you, the banner came from you, the gavel from Glendale, California, Pasadena Rotary, our big friends, big neighbors, gave us nothing. But, you know, Pasadena.
Larry Sherwood, he's the person that was a Rotarian in this club. Did I get his name right, the builder?
Larry Shepard and Morgan.
Is that why there's an S on some of these San Gabriel homes on the chimneys? Is that because there was that would be their signature?
No. Lois was an 8th grader working for him in the 40s and 50s. Do you know what the S is for?
Why is there
Stay out.
Stay out.
You mean I'm an attorney?
It's the mark of a particular craftsman, I believe, the person that built those homes. I forgot his name, but his sign was that.
With the S?
Yes.
I hadn't heard that. Shepard and Morgan did primarily the old Rose Farm, the cheap stuff down, well, they were all over town, I know, but they heavily developed the southeast corner of San Marino. And I don't think there are many S's down there. Well, Alhambra, we don't go there. We don't. Thank you. The one and only
Ken Veronda. Well, that's it. We're just about right on time. I was going to offer to donate a book in Ken's name, but since he left the stage and he's on his way to the door, more than likely, we're going to donate a book to our public library in the names of Dennis Gitterchuk and Lorraine Simpson. Thank you, all of you, for coming. Thank you, everyone, for being here to celebrate our 75th. Oh, good, I still have a gavel. This meeting is adjourned.